Welcome everybody to our live cast. Sorry about last week, a little bit of tech difficulty, but today we've got a few really cool things to talk about. One big announcement that we kind of leaked out on Facebook, but as we get started here, we'll kind of go over what that is and how it works and all that. And today we're going to be talking about basically monthly health checks, which I think we'll define a little bit better, but let's say monthly statistics tracking or monthly performance optimization. But I want to talk about ways that we can improve the way that healthcare practices are looking at numbers and maybe make it a little less boring, right?
Yeah, less boring is good.
Less boring is always good, and I mean, definitely when you're, in the clinical weeds. I mean, I remember when I was doing clinic hours in grad school for mental health. I mean, you wrote down notes on a sheet of paper, handed it to the front desk, and didn't even think twice. The last thing you wanted to be bothered with was anything else.
I'm going to eat dinner now.
Yeah, I just spent the last 8 hours talking to people, and I'm going to go ahead and not worry about any of that. But I think one of the major differences that we wanted to strike here was the difference between operational and performance metrics, right?
Yeah.
And so can we define that a little bit?
Everybody wants to look at the bottom line. How many new patients did I get in? How much did I bill out? How much did I collect? Bottom line. And those things are great. And I'm never going to suggest somebody that you stop tracking those things. But tracking the operational metrics that drive those numbers are what I want practice owners to consider on today's live cast. How can they shift their focus on a daily basis so that they don't have to pay as much attention to the performance metrics, because they'll have the confidence that they'll be where they want them to be?
So I think that that's a really, really important point, because when we work with, individual practice owners and their staff, one of the biggest things that we find is that they're kind of lost in the weeds. They're focused on so many things at the same time, so many metrics, so many numbers, that it almost becomes debilitating, almost impossible to actually make a change or to improve things.
We want to simplify that. We want to coach people on which ones to look at first, right? So that they can narrow their focus down to, let's just say four metrics that they're going to look at for a certain amount of time. Get those 4 under control, and then add another 1 or 2 at a time for the operational metrics, and prove us if you do that your collections and your patient retention and the other performance metrics that you're so worried about, and you should be, go up. And we are here to tell you that we know they will. And it's not because we've theoretically done this. We have this working for hundreds of practices. And so we can tell you with certainty that this works.
Yeah, and I mean, when we talk about performance metrics, I mean, we're talking about like revenue, right? We're talking about the bottom line versus operational, which is the day-to-day, making sure that people get their work done.
Yep, there you go. Total billed, number of visits, and total collected are typically the performance metrics that I hear practice owners talk about most. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And no-shows.
You know what? No-shows is a big deal, but is it a performance metric? Reuven, I would put that in the operational category. That's your day-to-day. That's a war you wage every few minutes. And you have to make sure that you have a process in place that you can actually measure. Because if you're not measuring and you're not helping practice owners clearly define who's responsible for it, how you're going to go about doing it, and then measuring whether or not it actually happened, no-shows can be an awful contributor to lower collections, lower visits, right? Lower billed out numbers.
Right.
But you're not going to know how to fix it. So,
right. I wonder how many people out there think that no-shows are a performance metric as opposed to an operational one, because again, when you learn about these things, it's nobody really teaches you the difference between a performance and an operational metric. And even more so emotionally, I think you're more tied to a no-show versus the total number of visits, because each time a patient misses an appointment, it's almost like an attack on you. You know, if you're not thinking big, if you're thinking on the sole provider level, you know, each time a patient misses an appointment, that's an opportunity you had to make somebody better, and they chose not to commit to that, to follow through with that. And you know, I think there's a lot of people out there that attach themselves emotionally to metrics, which kind of makes it difficult to clearly separate operational and performance metrics.
And let's face it, Ruben, the doctors that we deal with, they don't casually approach the relationship with their patients.
Right.
It's not a casual relationship in the slightest. They pour their souls into these practices, and the fact that they lost somebody is probably only more frustrating than the fact that they were too focused on I don't want to call it the rat race, but too focused on everything else in the practice to notice. And here I want the people listening to take a step back and say, all right, how can I change what I'm doing right now? How can I change what I'm doing right now to fix that? And that's where I want to coach people today to focus more on the operational metrics. And I'll quickly list the ones out that I recommend that people look at. And to start, you're never going to stop looking at your bank account every day. I'm done trying to convince providers to stop doing that.
Right. Yeah. No.
They're going to do it. Okay. I
Yeah.
get that you're going to do it, but you have to funnel the other operational tasks that can span a spectrum of following up on a no-show, like you mentioned, making sure that no patient leaves your office without a future appointment, claims that need to be followed up on, right? Underpayments that are detected automatically by a system like ours that go back to that same queue of claims that I was just talking about that are rejected, right? An underpayment is just as bad in my opinion, because now you're giving a license to the insurance company to keep doing it to you. And so you have to funnel those things. Those are the first things, the first two things, claims and tasks, that you need to funnel into two separate queues. Now you can give clarity to your staff. These are the operational metrics that are expected to be completed on a daily basis.
Right.
Then, I'm sorry, give me 2 more seconds on that. We then give you a window. The practice owner or the practice administrator, because we know we've got some monster practices on the line where practice owners might be rolling their eyes at me right now. Guys, there's no way. I've got 40 people working for me. I understand that you're going to have department heads. We can break this down into different groups where you can look at it very easily and make your department heads very, very responsible and accountable for the claims and tasks that they need to get done. Every day you drive that number to 0. And if you can't do it in the first few days or even the first week or two, you make a goal to get that one to 0. And you start with only those things.
And I wonder how much of that is mindset versus, you know, just understanding that should be done that way. You know, like, you know, you think about it, you know, practices will oftentimes naturally gravitate towards this without obviously powerful technology like Vericle, but
you've seen that.
They'll do that with they'll try it with Post-it notes, they'll try it with emails, they'll try it with, you know, all kinds of, you know, band-aids that, I mean, naturally people, I think, practice owners especially, but even staff members are looking for that clarity, because if all I have to do is worry about one number or two numbers every day, then I'm not thinking, all right, did I do this? Did I do that? Did I do this? You know, am I going to sleep at night thinking, was everything done? You know, and so I think some of that actually, and this came up a lot over the last weekend. I was at the FCA conference, and a lot of the doctors, a lot of the practice staff listening in often are going to be chiropractors, physical therapists, and if you're an MD or an NP, you may be working for one of those two in a multi-specialty practice, and we're seeing that start to grow in a big way. And one of the biggest parts of making something like that that's so complicated work is that simplification of all those different metrics. You know, taking all those different specialties who have all those support staff, and then the front office and the back office, everybody needs to be held accountable to numbers that don't just allow them to know what they're doing, but allow them to be a part of the entire office. And that's a mindset thing. I mean, how many offices have you walked into where, the back office doesn't even really know or like the front office because they never interact?
Yeah.
You know,
Too often, I think is how I'd like to describe that. But
or even better, the back office has never even seen a patient, never even talked to a patient before. You know,
is that a bad thing?
well, I guess it depends on your back office, but
Right. It does depend on your back office, but let's be really clear about what their roles are. It's okay that they're different, but understanding that they're all cogs in one machine that has a goal of a great patient experience has to be universal, right?
right.
So if you ever put yourself in the shoes of your front desk person, and let's just say that person has been on the job for all of 2 days now, okay, and you
Hmm.
lost your other person, right? You're expecting that person to perform because your back office can't even come close to doing their job, right? Unless the
Right.
front office is doing theirs. If your intake is awful, guess what? The follow-up people are going to be feeling. They're going to be feeling resentment toward that front desk person who just can't seem to get it right. So we've got to make sure that everyone understands the synergy between those two roles. I think most practice owners do, Ruben. I very rarely run across a practice owner who doesn't get that. But how do you know if the Post-it note was missed? You can't follow up with somebody. Well, did you see the Post-it note? Yeah.
Did you
Okay.
get the memo?
Yeah. TPS reports.
Yeah.
The joke's bad, but it's relevant. In this particular case, though, we need to make sure that they have their tasks that are assigned to them, and the front desk people can make sure that the back office people have done their job, and vice versa. And the practice owner can see it all. And we can then achieve the goal of making sure that the patient has a great experience. And that's what it comes down to. But if that front desk person has no experience, they haven't seen the process, but it's clearly laid out in tasks that they simply have to read and take the next one that's available, do it, and make sure it's done. They end up only looking two places, the scheduler and their task backlog. There's no other place that they have to learn in a complex system. It's done. It's over with. We
Yeah.
simplify it quite a bit.
And I think that's an important thing because as things start to become more and more consolidated, I mean, just like in Vericle, you're seeing systems start to do as much of the entire flow as possible, including quality assurance. I mean, that's one of the biggest things that I see missing. Walking the floor at the FCA, right? There are lots of different software platforms out there, not just Vericle,
Yeah.
and it just so happens that Vericle is the chosen product for Genesis chiropractic software, for PBS, for Best PT, for so many consulting and management groups out there that you walk the floor and you see that, yeah, I've got this feature and that feature, and I've got billing, but I've got no quality assurance built into the billing. I've just got reports and maybe even some workflow, but there's nothing in the system that holds anyone accountable and makes sure that they're doing well on a certain percentage of their work.
And that's the
There's no
difference
automation.
with operational metrics. If practice owners shift their focus from looking at a bank account and then pulling the thread on that sweater, because you see bank account lower than you want it to be, what do you do next? You obviously look at claims. Claims, they're down, they're up, they're unpaid, they're underpaid. You have to start figuring that out, right? And then all of those things were eventually going to lead you back to, oh my gosh, we didn't bill out this visit, we didn't bill out this patient. Then you have to keep pulling the thread further to go back to, oh, my staff didn't get this job done. No
Right.
one told, and not because they're neglectful. They just lost it in the shift and struggle of every day trying to run high volume practices. I very rarely find incompetent staff members. Very rarely. It's just we don't provide them the clarity. So if we do that, if we take those operational metrics and we put them into two separate queues, claims and tasks, you then can see which people are or are not getting the job done, because you can hold that individual person accountable. And let's just say, you get done at the end of the day, you have 4 people on your staff, 3 out of the 4 have their backlog of tasks or claims to 0. You know where your weak spot is. You know where you can focus a little bit of attention. But Ruben, let's just take the flip side of that coin and imagine everybody got it down to 0, and yet collections still are not where you would like them to be. The accounts receivable bucket that's aged out over 120 days is growing, right? Your patient visits are going down.
Right.
We can get to a stage 2 on this, right? Because we're looking at those operational metrics. If they're all done, it's not as if they encompass all of them. The stage 2 on this one would be increasing that view. If you have your staff members already doing the first stage of things, are all of our visits billed out? That's an operational metric. That's not a performance metric. You
Right.
can't get paid unless you bill it out. Even if you collect money on a cash patient, how are you going to know that the right visits were paid, whether the right point of sale items or DME items were sold and paid, unless you keep excellent books? So you start expanding that operational accountability to clinicians as well in your office, right? So now you want to make sure that all of those other things are done. Are there visits without notes? Are there unsigned visits? That accountability goes further on an operational basis and really drives people to, am I putting a shield up for my practice should an auditor come that I can I don't want to say easily, but at least realistically, Ruben, I'll use that word, realistically follow up without having to memory manage, without having to put Post-its places, so I can go and follow up with all my clinicians in one view. And we can automate those things. Anytime you have a clinician that's out of sorts, we can make it easy for that practice owner to see that, hey, their backlog of things is piling up. That's where my weak point is. Because if you've got all your visits billed out, if you've got all your claims followed up on, if you have all of your patients followed up on to make sure there are no shows are rescheduled or nobody left your office without a future appointment, now you can expect performance excellence. And if it's not there, we can even go a step further, but I don't know if we'll have time to do that on this live cast, but we can even go a step further with how to diagnose those problems should they come.
Yeah, and I find it really impressive when a practice tends to do this naturally. I mean, we have a practice out in Colorado where, they're a little bit metric savvy. Would that be an understatement? I mean,
they're superhuman.
They're superhuman.
Not mortals.
Yeah. And it's just incredible when you have somebody who's naturally predisposed to it, because they look at a solution like Vericle and they just go, wow, how could you do it any other way? I mean, this makes it super simple for the people who aren't superhuman like us, who want to look at 1,000 reports. But it also allows us at our level to keep adding things as we understand metrics, so we can keep adding metrics and keep expanding, because in a multi-specialty environment, I mean, that's the biggest thing, right? The biggest thing in multi-specialty isn't volume of patients necessarily, it's volume of services. It's volume and consolidation of what you offer to a single patient, so that I can get that patient scheduled 4, 5, 6, even 10 times in the same day.
You're going to do, let's just say a TENS unit, or you're going to do some sort of neuromodulator, right? And you want to make sure the test comes back, and if the test comes back positive, you're going to schedule the procedure to get the unit permanently implanted, right?
Right.
I'm working with a practice right now that just does not have the follow-up capability to make sure that this very highly reimbursable activity is getting done on all the patients with positive results. And it's because they're memory managing it. And when those results come back in, why are they not getting put in charts? And we help them automate it. And you see patient values skyrocket 20 to 30% per patient that they're retaining. And that's a game breaker for so many people. But back to that superhuman, what if you're a practice owner on the phone right now and you don't have superhuman staff? You end up reacting and saying, why isn't this getting done? And you're frustrated and your staff is intimidated. Here you can make the job very, very clear and very simple for them if you are to get something like that. And I want to plug Maximize Living right now. Maximize Living, actually, you mentioned Genesis uses
another great client. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we recently had a conference with them over the weekend. We attended the conference, and they have a mantra, and practice owners are going to cringe when they hear this: reports are bad. They say it. They actually come up to us and they flash us a little hello. Reports are bad, guys. And as they're pointing to our booth and they're walking by to their next class,
Right.
continuing education unit, because they know they've adopted the philosophy that I'm going to make sure all of my operational metrics are to zero every day using a workflow system, and they know that the results will be there from a performance basis. Reports are bad. A lot of practice owners I've talked to, I need this report, I need that report. And I show it to them, Ruben. I break down, I show it to them. We do have those reports. We have every report that anyone's pretty much ever asked us for. But then I tell them reports are bad. And we go through the operational metric story that we're talking about today. You want your staff to get every patient every time with near 100% accuracy. Here's the way you go about doing it. You shift your focus to operational metrics, and I promise you that the performance metrics will come.
Yeah, and how many practices are, still working their billing off of aging reports? How many practices are still, trying to follow up on claims in that way? But I want to switch gears just a little bit here, because at the beginning of the live cast, I talked about something very cool that we wanted to announce, and we're announcing it here, and only the people here can actually do this for free, because once it goes live, there's going to be a monthly fee associated with it. But what this is actually called FBM Shop. .com. So this is actually pretty cool. So this is a, and you should get this up on your screen, so you should be able to check it out. But basically, what we've done at POI, and so in POI we have a number of products and services, one of which is Vericle, which we've been talking about in terms of workflow and all that. The other one that we're now releasing, or starting to release, is FBM Shop. And what that is if you're selling anything in your office today, whether it's biofreeze, anything short of something that's billable to insurance, really, then you're probably experiencing some pain. Number one, you're experiencing pain because you're not buying at huge volumes, because it's just too expensive, which means you're not getting huge discounts on the items that you purchase, which means your margin is probably pretty small. You're having to buy a lot of those items, so maybe 10, 15, 20 of each item, knowing that you may not sell all of them, but in the meantime, you're paying for it. And you have to actually manage that inventory in office. So somebody actually has to be responsible for that, as opposed to being responsible for patient care. So what FBM Shop does is it creates a custom online store for you. So it's kind of like creating an Amazon for your own practice. So it's branded with your logo, your banner, everything. And basically you get access to hundreds of products, including things like biofreeze and sports tape and physical therapy products and chiropractic products, nutritional products, all kinds of really great products. And you can let your patients check them out, purchase them, and have them delivered straight to their door. So now patients don't have to, I've had this experience where you finish up at an office, you say, you know what, I will try that probiotic or prebiotic supplement or whatever. And now you have to hold that, you have to hold your wallet, you have to hold your keys. Now I have to get my credit card out, I have to swipe it, and now I'm trying to hold all this stuff. Whereas in this case, the patient gets it and they leave and it shows up at their door. Even better, you can set your patients up on subscriptions so that if they need that product every 30 days, like they need a tube of biofreeze every 30 days, you can just have it delivered to them every 30 days, which eliminates the need for them to pull out a credit card, which is huge. Every time a patient pulls out a credit card or a person pulls out a credit card, they immediately regret what they were doing. Nobody likes to spend money, right? So if you have it on auto pay, you can focus on the benefit of that product as opposed to the cost of it. And so right now, if you sign up and create your own shop, this is pretty cool. When this thing goes live, it's going to cost $20 a month to have. For now, it's going to be free forever for anyone who signs up here. In the next few weeks, when we roll it out, we're going to be starting to set up those fees. So the way that this works is, aside from your $20 a month, there is no cost to you. Basically, the way it works is each time you sell products, every couple of weeks, you're going to get a check cut to you, and you're going to be able to see exactly how much you made on your products, from your own reports. Very cool stuff coming next as well. So one of the next iterations of this product is actually going to be integration with our other products, so that your patients can actually get recommendations based on the care they're receiving. So if your patient is being treated for headaches and you just started offering this cool new supplement that's supposed to help relieve headaches in conjunction with care, they can get that recommended to them, not just when they're in the office, but between visits. So, so if you haven't had a chance to check this out yet, definitely check it out. And like I said, it's going to be free for now, and then once it's live, it'll be $20 a month. So Jason, what do you think in terms of the practices that we've worked with that do point of sale, right? I mean, are there any other things that they bring up as concerns with having to manage stuff in the office, manage stocking and all that?
Inventory control is universal. I don't know any practice that moves enough product that is of concern that isn't worried about running out of the next, the supplement that they move the most of without having to reorder. And I hate to say it, it's an operational metric. If you want one more example, right? That's something we can automate, open and task for reorder to make sure that you don't run out of those types of things. As far as other items is, we do have a lot of practices that put patients on care plans, right? A certain dollar amount comes out each month. Just call it $300, Rivet. $300, the patient comes in, they never think about that $300 again. They signed up for the year of care, they come in every single time. We have lots of practices that include that monthly cost of the DME that they know they're gonna need in either supplements or BioFreeze, whatever it is that you're talking about. And so we can include those recurring payments right there on the patient account. They post directly to the patient account. When you start running low, the task opens up, the patient's paying for their stuff. They're not even pulling out their wallet anymore. They're just getting better and focusing on talking to you about that and not the financial aspect of it.
And I think that's an important thing. You know, if you're a coach listening, you know, this is something that you can extend to your practices today. I mean, and keep in mind that there's going to be no cost to them as well. So if you have practices that you're talking to that, you know, are struggling to increase their revenue, they're trying new things, some of them aren't working, but you know that they're selling products in their office, you know that they have point of sale, then this is a great opportunity to say, listen, you could really leverage this to at least eliminate a lot of the costs associated with the point of sale you're already doing. But even better, if you start getting patients on subscriptions for a lot of the products that you're giving them each time they come in, now you can just ask them about the product that they're using, as opposed to convincing them every time that they should get it again. So definitely something to consider. But again, this is something that's only going to be available through here or through your coach. So great. So I think that today we got a pretty good idea of, you know, the differences between operational performance metrics. You know, when we're talking about what we want to track, always start with a small number of them, then increase them, and always try to drill them down to basically two numbers, right? What you got to do today, and you know, and getting it done. I think that'll about wrap it up for today, Jason. I can't imagine that that we want to go into too much more detail without them talking to somebody who's going to walk them through it, right?
Yeah, that's the last thing I'd leave people with is, you know, this is a game changer. I've seen staff embrace this, and I've seen staff kind of buck this, but every single time I've seen staff get this done, whether or not they liked it in the beginning or not, I've seen practices grow, and I've seen them be happier. They're happier to take on new tasks, because understanding what they have to do and how they have to go about doing it is about half the battle. And this saves so much time, energy, effort, and strife in practices. So I really recommend everybody listening think about implementing this in their office.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.